did medieval teens hang out at medieval shopping malls? Who were the retailers that anchored these malls? Were there Renaissance fairs in the Middle Ages? And have you seen the size of medieval potholes? These and other questions will be answered right after this. I'm Professor Jerome Arkenberg, and I've been teaching a wide variety of history courses at colleges across this country for the past 30 years. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the problem with medieval roads and ships, the difference between markets and fairs, when and where medieval markets were held, and what killed medieval, but clearly not Renaissance, fairs. At the end, I'll have the wrap-up quote on this video. But first, make sure to click like, share, and subscribe, and that little bell thingy, so I can continue to bring you more great videos just like this one. After the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, long-distance trade essentially collapsed as well, except for a few items, such as papyrus, which was needed for papal records, at least until the 7th century, glass, lead, silk, fine cloth, and certain spices, brought in by Syrian and Jewish merchants. But as conditions in Europe settled down, the Italians began trading with Byzantium and Egypt, and the Holy Land was seized by the Crusaders. So trade picked up with the demand for spices, and especially pepper, silk, damask, Damascus steel, and other luxury goods. But this trade was hampered by the state of the roads, which were notoriously bad infested with robbers and bandits. And while Roman roads still formed the main traffic arteries, despite having been largely destroyed by weather and looting of paving stones for building material, they did not extend beyond the Rhine and Danube rivers or into Scotland and Ireland. You see that clearly on this map. This, by the way, is Watling Street in England, which went from London all the way up to Chester. Bridges on these routes varied in quality. Those in or giving access to a city were usually well maintained, since they were often part of a city's defenses. And here we see the bridges of Paris and the famed London Bridge. And notice, of course, all the many houses and other buildings on these bridges, which I'll get to in a second. As I said, most of these bridges had a variety of buildings atop them, from houses to palaces, and shops to chapels. And you see here again the buildings on London Bridge with illustrations of what it would have looked like. There we are, shops and London Bridge. You actually had to go under and sometimes through them. And this is the Chapel of St. Thomas Becket on London Bridge. There it is, the Chapel of St. Thomas Becket on London Bridge. And here we are, shoppers going through the bridge. However, in the countryside, these bridges were nearly non-existent unless left over from Roman times, were often not maintained, such as this one, the Pont du Diable. It was great, except right here in the middle, there were a number of stones that were missing. You could get by on foot, mostly, but a cart or horse would simply plunge down through the bottom. which of course is why it's called the Devil's Bridge. Here's another one in Koblenz in Germany. Looks nice, crappy bridge. Further, progress along what roads existed was slow. Pack horses and mules could travel but 20 miles a day, and carts but 15 miles a day, worsened from having to travel in guarded caravans to lessen the risk from the ubiquitous bandits and brigands. So, transport by water, river, canal, or sea was preferred, as bulk goods could be moved safely and cheaply in large volumes, despite the presence of rapacious tolls on boat traffic. And yes, in some areas, you that live in areas that have tollways or turnpikes, you will well deservedly complain about them today, but this is much better than anything in the Middle Ages. The Galley was a speedy, light, lateen-rigged ship, seen here, with a long, slim hull, largely a descendant of the ancient Greek triremes and biremes. These were best suited for trading in luxury goods of little bulk, such as spices, as cargo space was limited because most space was taken up by crews of 212 oarsmen, part of whom served as a defense force against marauding Arabs and pirates. Not necessarily a difference there. Built in various sizes, the round boat, seen here, with its wider displacement, smaller crew, and square rigging that later became the caravel, was a transport of choice for bulk goods not suited for galleys, such as grain, ore, wine, and slaves. In Northern Europe, the ship of choice was the Baltic Cog. As seen here, this is the medieval love boat, clearly. These are other of these cogs. These were ideal for the Hanseatic League, or the Hanse's bulk trade, until the 14th century, when the cog was enlarged into the Hulk, and then into the Incredible Hulk. Much of the goods shipped by road or sea were destined for sale in markets, and in towns these were of all shapes and sizes, from vast open spaces to simply wider than normal streets. On regular days of the week, stalls would be set up in the marketplace, and you could see them here. This is actually the marketplace held in front of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Not unusual for a market to be held on the church grounds. After all, it's holy, so why would you cheat somebody there? It's a terrible sin. Here are some more, and of course, apparently these are pickpockets. This one is about to get a beating from somebody. This is one of these stalls. Anyway, stalls would be set up in the marketplace, though in large cities, 2 or more markets were common, held on different days and specializing in certain goods, such as grain, hay, butter, wine, etc. Fruit, eggs, vegetables, butter, etc. were usually sold in temporary stalls, while local artisans had permanent stalls, where they offered products such as cloth, leather, or metal goods for sale or barter. And we see here, these would be the permanent stalls. No, this one is, let's see, I'm not sure what he is, probably a pepperer. Seems to be a draper, and this is a barber. These are some of the stalls. Temporary ones, often common. This was Meals on Wheels. Yes, this is a little oven, more of a keep-warm oven, where pasties and other foods were sold. These were notoriously badly produced products, adulterated with all kinds of not good material to eat. During market days, all shops other than those in the marketplace would be forced to close by town ordinance, as sellers without permanent shops paid tolls and fees for the privilege that none else would sell on those days. And let's take a look here. This, of course, is a spice seller, a spicer. And this is the market at Norwich in England in the 14th century. Notice, of course, the different stalls and different areas. But notice the things are on the side. The toll house is the local jail. And then around it, we have a tavern here. Let's see, another tavern here. And Common Inn here. So there's the vegetable market and the hatters. The goldsmiths were here. The hosiery people were here, along with the cutlers. These are the, let's see, I can't quite tell, lantern makers. The saddlers at Saddlegate. Another tavern down here. A synagogue here. Another tavern on the opposite side, so largely taverns on all four sides. Then between, St. Peter Mancroft Church, the wheat market, the poultry market, the sheep market, and the calf market. These are the temporary ones where people would bring in stuff on occasion, and these being the more permanent stalls. The right to hold markets became a key privilege, such that towns tried to force merchants to stop and sell in the town, whether they wanted to or not. At the same point, they prohibited forestalling, that is, selling outside the town limits and its various rules. Grants of market privileges in the thousands were made by town overlords. But markets off major routes or in areas with no steady demand for luxury goods rarely prospered. Markets might be supplemented by fairs, such as the famed fairs of Champagne in France. These are annual or biennial gatherings of merchants engaged in long-distance trade, where they would exchange cloth, silk, jewelry, glass, and other luxury items. But by the early 14th century, the Champagne fairs were no more. See, nobody's here. Done in by French kings, who imposed such high taxes on merchants, thinking, what could the merchants do? They did. They went elsewhere. And the fairs collapsed. And this is the trouble with medieval rulership and their knowledge of the medieval economy. Not that we are perfect today, but they often made decisions that ruined the economy in their own country because they didn't really know what the heck they were doing. The wrap-up quote from Fra Humbert de Romans, the provincial general provincial of the Dominican order in 1260. Quote, though markets and fairs are terms often used indiscriminately, there is a difference between them. For fairs deal with larger things and only once in the year, or at least rarely in the same place. And to them come men from afar. But markets are for lesser things, the daily necessaries of life. They are held weekly, and only people from near at hand come. Fairs are usually held on feast days, and men miss thereby the divine office and the sermon, and even disobey the precept of hearing Mass, and attend these meetings against the Church's commands. Sometimes quarrels happen, and violent disputes. Drinking is occasioned. Unquote. Let me know what you think of this quote in the comments section below. Also, what you liked about this video and what other historical topics or subjects you'd like to see in future videos. Be sure to click like, share, and subscribe, as it will help me bring you more great videos. And click on that little bell thingy so you'll know when the next History Waits for No One video is posted. If you want to know more, there are recommended studies on this topic in the descriptions below, along with other ways to connect with me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the past.